Earlier this year, I was sitting in the audience at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival watching a lineup of women from around the world, and I had this uncomfortable realization that I felt a little bit invisible. I didn't feel like the performers were really talking to women like me. The stories were about sleepless nights with young kids, finding babysitters, dealing with mothers-in-law, and there were so many cultural references, songs and TV shows and movies. I just didn't get them. And I remember leaving the theatre thinking, where are all the comedians over 50? And then almost immediately I had another thought. Maybe I should try my hand at comedy, which, to be clear, is well outside my comfort zone. But the next day I had a look online, as we do, and started to Google, and that's how I came across today's guest, Mandy Scotney. At 56, Mandy is one of Sydney's oldest emerging comedians. She only began comedy a few years ago and already performs regularly at Sydney's top comedy rooms. Her shows have been shortlisted for major awards, and just last month she was selected for the Sydney Comedy Festival's Fresh lineup, recognising her as one of the city's best emerging comedians. But comedy isn't the only part of Mandy's story. She's also a PhD candidate, an academic, an experienced business leader, and a mental health expert. And what I'm really interested in talking about today is not just how she became a comedian in her 50s, but how she built a life around stepping into new adventures. So Mandy, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Mandy, when people ask you what you do now, what do you usually say?
Well, I say it's complicated. I certainly don't have a traditional career anymore. So yes, I'm currently, hopefully, fingers crossed, in my last year of my PhD at Western Sydney Uni. And then I also teach casually at university in the social sciences and in the School of Counselling and Psychotherapy. And then as well as that, I have a finger still in the commercial world. I do some marketing projects and strategy projects and bits and pieces here and there, as well as occasionally get involved in facilitating board strategy days and that kind of thing, often in the not-for-profit and membership sectors. And then comedy. Comedy is not so much a career, not so much a job at this stage, more of a passion, a serious hobby, perhaps an obsession.
So, I mean, comedy, given what you've just said out about your career and what you do for work and your portfolio life, comedy sounds quite different to those activities, the intellectual work of academia and teaching and the commercial world. So take me back to that moment when comedy first came into your life, and how old were you and what was happening at that time?
Sure. Well, firstly, I do think there is a thread through everything I do and everything I've always done. And I think that is about communication and communicating ideas. So whether that is making people laugh or maybe making people think, or even maybe both at the same time, that thread exists. I had never thought of doing comedy, ever. I would occasionally go to a showcase at the Comedy Store if they had cheap tickets. I couldn't have named more than maybe one comedian. I think I'd seen Hannah Gadsby's first Netflix special and was blown away by that, because I was like, oh my goodness, you can make people laugh and you can make them think and you can make them cry. How awesome. But yeah, no desire to do comedy. And then, of all things, I was on a bushwalk and was chatting to someone on the bushwalk, and we were talking about, by this stage I was doing some teaching. This is only the end of 2022, early 2023. And I was on a bushwalk and talking about, like, teaching at university and trying to engage students and getting them to come up with ideas and participate in classes. And this man I was talking to said he'd done a 4-week stand-up comedy course at Sydney Community College, not to perform comedy, but to consider how to incorporate humour into his work. He did a lot of speaking. And I thought, oh, that's a good idea. You know, like I said, occasionally I do some facilitation work, I do MC. So speaking is a thing that I do. Communicating is something that I do. And I thought, you know, I think I'm funny. People laugh. I can make people laugh. But it would be great to be able to actually understand how to write a joke, how to be funnier, how to be more engaging. Because I don't know, I kind of think that if students are laughing, they're going to be more engaged. If you're running, you know, you're the MC of a conference, it's better if you can keep people entertained. So that was my reason. I had no intention of doing comedy at all. So I just went to this 4-week course, and the people in the course were like kind of comedy nerds. They were quite obsessive. They all knew their favorite comedians, their favorite jokes, and they were really like, they really were into it. And this was like, you know, something they'd always wanted to do. And I remember feeling like a little bit out of place, going, oh, not really that into it. But I had so much fun being in this space purely designed to make people laugh, to just, for no other purpose. There was no other purpose. At the end of the 4 weeks, we had to deliver a 5-minute set just to the class. It wasn't like some comedy courses will do big shows. This wasn't like this. This was just 5-minute set back to the class. And I had so much fun writing it. I found in a way my day-to-day perception of life changed.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yes, because as I moved through my day and just let, you know, thoughts come, I was consciously looking for the funny. I was consciously looking for the ridiculous. I was looking for the joke in everything, which, you know, academia and the work that I do, it can be pretty serious sometimes. So to suddenly be looking for the funny, which probably fits with my personality anyway, just felt great. So yeah, I delivered my 5 minutes. Looking back, it wasn't the best tight 5 ever, but I did get a very, very big laugh at the end. And that feeling was pretty cool. That was just like, that was awesome. You know, suddenly having this room full of people laughing, like really laughing. I recorded it. I sent the recording to my daughter who was living in Tasmania at the time, and her response was brilliant. She was just like, oh, Mum, that was so funny. You were born to do this. You were born to do this. Because I got to say, I've always been a bit of a frustrated performer. You know, as a kid, I wanted to be, I don't know, the blonde in ABBA, or later on I was in a bit of a super Christian phase and I was, you know, going to be a Christian singer, Australia's take on Amy Grant. There was all sorts of, I always wanted to perform, you know, I wanted to be in the plays, I wanted the lead roles, or I was going to be like a news reporter, whatever. But obviously I didn't do any of that. I had a very kind of, I was a mum in my early 20s. So, you know, I had to be proper and growing up and earn the money and do all those things. So, yeah, it had never really entered my mind, but it just felt so good. And so after the course, a few people on the course were like, hey, we're going to try some open mics. Do you want to come? I was like, oh, yeah, why not? That sounds fun. And again, like the open mic scene is a pretty interesting scene, you know, like they can be in fairly, I think interesting is the word that's going to keep coming up, interesting pubs. You'd walk in very, very male dominated. I think probably I don't know. I was going to. I do my hobbies hard. I get obsessed about things. So suddenly I'm going to 3 open mics a week, and
Oh my
off.
goodness.
Yeah, I know. I do. I'm a bit obsessive, and I'd go in and I would be one of the only female comedians, and by far the
Mm.
oldest. And you can kind of see them looking at me a little bit like scared, intimidated. Why is mum here? Who brought mum? Um, so yeah, often the only woman. And like hard crowds, because most of the people watching are just the other comedians and they're not really interested in what you're saying. So that was interesting, but it didn't take long. I was the only person in the course in the end who kept going to open mics, and within a few months, I started getting booked gigs. So still like not paid, but actually on booked lineups, which was sort of like the next step. And I entered the national competition called Raw.
Tell us about Raw. What is that?
Yeah, so it's run across Australia, so in every city, in every state, and at the end, so there are state finals, and then if you're a state finalist, then you have another show and you have the opportunity to win and the state, and then go into the national final, which happens in Melbourne at Melbourne Comedy Festival every year. And the idea, it's for new developing comedians. I left it too late to get into the Sydney heats, and I was going down to visit my daughter in Tasmania anyway in February, which was when the competition was, and I saw that the dates for the Hobart heats coincided with when I was going to be there. So I checked the rules and it was totally fine to apply out of state. So I went and I did the Raw comedy in Tasmania. And they did say, they were like, oh, we see that your application, you live in New South Wales, but you've applied for Tasmania. That's totally okay. It's not outside the rules. But if you win the heat, you'll have to come back on your own expense to compete in the state final. And then if you win the state final, then you'll be representing Tasmania in the national final. And I did have a moment where I was like, is that ethical? Is that okay? Mainlander coming down and taking their spots. But I decided it was okay. So yeah, so I did compete in the Hobart heat, which I won, and I became a state finalist for Raw.
Wow.
State
Tasmania.
finalist Tasmania, which is pretty funny. But you know what? I'll take that. I'll take
Hmm.
that. So that was really early on. I'd only been doing comedy for about 3 months, 2 months, 3 months when I did that. And so, I started running my own comedy room as well within about 6 months. A friend of mine is involved in a cooperative brewery in Enmore, and they were trying to, in that sort of early 2023, trying to rebuild live entertainment, that sort of resurgence of life post the COVID era. So she said to me, oh, we're looking for some live stuff. Do you want to run a comedy night at the brewery? And I'm like, I've been doing comedy for all of 3 months. Why not? I mean, it took me 6 months before I said, yep, I'm ready. So I started running that, booking the comedians, emceeing, and I'm still doing that now. And it's been great fun doing that. So I've sort of been doing a bit of producing as well as doing the comedy. And now, yeah, I'm gigging. I'm not gigging this weekend, but usually I would have 2 or 3 gigs a week. As you said in your intro, I've just done Sydney Comedy Festival. That was my first solo show. That was an hour. So yeah, it's been a great ride, and I love it. I absolutely love it. I have so much fun. There is something so amazing about, particularly running my own shows. Like bringing a group of people together. Something changes. Something changes in the room when they laugh together. And it's really quite beautiful, you know. I think the world is a bit of a wild place at the moment. So if we can bring people together to laugh, I think it's one of the most powerful things we can do.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I'm a huge comedy fan, and I absolutely agree with you that laughter is a fantastic medicine and antidote to, some of the
Mm.
really difficult things that are happening in the world. I really liked your description of hard hobby. Is that what you've done across your life? You've
Ah,
picked up
yes,
something and it's blown
yes.
up big in your life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yoga was kind of the same. I started doing yoga. Oh, that was a long time ago now. And within 6 months or a year, I was like, I want to teach yoga. And then I started, but well, and then, yeah, no, yoga did end up becoming my whole personality as well. I was one of those annoying people with no matter what was going on in your life, whether it was your shoulder or heartbreak or whatever, I'd be like, you should do yoga. There's a pose for that. I was so annoying. And so yes, I am a bit obsessive. When I get excited about something, I tend to dive into it fairly enthusiastically. And I guess I have a real natural curiosity, and I love learning new stuff. I think one of my approaches to getting older is to stay curious and stay open, and never saying, oh, I'm too old to do that. I'm too old to learn that. I mean, obviously, I think about doing a ballet class. Now, I'm not going to be a professional ballerina at the age of 56. That is never going to happen. But I'm still not too old to give it a go.
Yeah.
And to play with it, because you don't have to be good at something to enjoy it necessarily.
No, that's
So I
right.
guess, yeah, comedy's kind of has fit into that a little bit. And also, I'm fulfilling that childhood dream. I've got a microphone in my hand and people have to listen to me. So they don't have to laugh, though. That is challenging. But, I love performing. I love being on stage. I love the creativity that's involved with comedy and the freedom. And, I was thinking about what you said at the start about, going to this all women comedy event, but not seeing yourself, not feeling represented there. And that is something, like, consciously, as part of my comedic voice, I guess, and what I'm trying to do on stage. I don't ever do the bit of, I'm 56 and everything's falling apart and everything hurts and this is getting droopy and, like that whole thing, which I guess, can be in the register of the older female comedian. I'm consciously trying to have a voice that says, yes, I'm getting older, but I'm wearing sparkly pants or leather pants, and I'm a bit cheeky and a bit sassy and never vulgar, but and I'm quite. I suppose I do have a fair few jokes that laugh at men. But not
You're very hesitant in admitting that, Mandy.
not nasty. I mean, every now and then somebody will roll their eyes and be like, "Oh, another one of your anti-men sets." But I'm trying very hard to just it's poke fun, and in doing so, I don't know. I think that's powerful. I think
Yeah.
that's really powerful. And when I curate my shows, the shows that I run, I try really hard to have diversity of voices, because I think that's important. I think that's really important. And sadly, comedy, it's not unusual for me to be on a lineup and there's one woman in the first half and one woman in the second half, and tick.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that, about what it has been like.
I think starting out, and this is the thing, like starting out, you have to, if you want to start at this age, you have to be willing to turn up to the open mics at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night, and there's 35, 40 people, you get 4 minutes, and you will be probably one of the few women in your age bracket in the room, one of the few women full stop, and definitely one of the few women in your age bracket. So for some people, they probably don't want to do that. I guess too, my daughter was in her 30s. She was living down in Tasmania. I was single. It was just like, am I willing to leave the cat at home by himself? So it wasn't like I had the partner or the family or anything to be like, why are you going out again on a Wednesday night? Having that, it doesn't stop the boys, does it? There's plenty of starting out comedians who leave their partners and children at home 3 nights or 4 nights or even more. Some of them are out doing it 7 nights a week. I am too old for that. I'm going to say that. I'm too old to be out 7 nights a week. So it's not easy to start out because unfortunately, you cannot practice comedy in private. It's not like learning to play the violin, which you can play in your room for all, like, with no audience. Comedy is a conversation. If you don't have somebody at the other end of that conversation, you don't know if your material works. You don't know if your jokes work. You don't know how it's going to land. And different audiences have different responses. So it is something you have to practice in public, which means you have to be willing to fail in public.
Yes, I'm feeling myself get uncomfortable as you're going there, because it's absolutely, that's where it takes you, isn't it? You have to be prepared to stand up and tank.
Yeah. And I have a bit of a joke. I joke with my partner. I have a partner now, and I joke with her about it because one of the first things she said to me was, "Oh, comedy, you're so brave." And I'm like, I hate it when people tell me I'm brave. Don't tell me I'm brave. It's like, don't tell me I'm brave. It's like, I want you to tell me I'm funny. But it is
so
brave.
I've had this conversation about brave on this podcast before, where another guest said they didn't like that either because they felt it misrepresented the step that they'd taken and what it meant to them. So tell us about you and that, your reaction to
Look,
brave.
very early on, I used to do a bit about being told, you look good for your age. It's like, just if you want to tell me I look good, tell me I look good. Yeah. Do we need to qualify it? And the brave thing, it's like coming off stage and someone saying to me, "Oh my goodness, you're so brave." At the same time, it is brave. It does take courage, and I think that's fine. I'll own that. And I don't think, for me, it does really. It can just be a bit condescending, can't it? It can be a little bit condescending because it does say you are taking a risk, and it's not acknowledging whether you've succeeded in that risk or not. It's just, you're so brave.
It's not the sort of thing everybody's going to do.
No.
So when you think about you and who you are as a person and how you've lived your life, what's the thread that got you out? As you said earlier, there's a thread across the work that you've done that's about communication, but this is something else. This is really putting yourself on the stage. What's that for
there
you?
Is part of me, my daughter saying to me the first time I sent her that recording, "Oh my goodness, Mum, you were born to do this." It's so corny. It's so corny when I hear myself say that. There is an element of that, though. There is an element of me almost reclaiming that little kid who desperately wanted to be on stage with a microphone, whether I was speaking or singing or whatever. But, because of the time, because of who my family are, and this is no disrespect to them, they're brilliant people. Their thought of doing something like this is just like, no, you can sing at church and that's about it. Maybe a Bible reading. Maybe do a Bible reading. So there is partly, reclaiming that part of me that always wanted to perform. I feel people say, do you get nervous? And I get a little bit nervous depending on kind of the gig, but once I'm up on stage, I have the best time. Like, I literally have so much fun. And doing my first hour show, which was a challenging show to do. I did this, my hour show was called Married for 6 Weeks, and it was about a true story of, in my mid-30s, falling madly in love and getting married, and the marriage lasting 6 weeks. So based on truth. And so that was a challenging thing to do. It was challenging on a number of levels. One, I'd never really told the story much before. After it happened, I changed jobs, and anyone who knew me after that period never knew the story because I was so ashamed of it. Like, I was just so ashamed that I made such a stupid, big life decision. So I never talked about it. And I was my first hour show, I was going to do about menopause, because menopause is definitely having a moment. There's a lot of talk about menopause, and I thought, well, that'll be fun, and it's marketable. There'll be a lot of women who want to come and see a comedy show about menopause. But I was chatting to one of my I have a few kind of comedy mentors, workshop groups that I'm a part of with more experienced comedians. And I was talking to one of these women, and she said, Mandy, and I'd done a storytelling night where I'd touched on the 6-week marriage a little earlier. And she said, you could do a comedy show about menopause. It'd be great, probably be very successful. It'll be really funny. But anyone can do a show about menopause. I'd love to see the show about your 6-week marriage. And I went, ooh.
Mm.
And so I was partly like, am I a good enough comedian to make that quite traumatic story funny? So that was a really interesting process. So I did the show first time at Sydney Fringe at the end of last year, and then I took it to Newcastle Fringe in March. And then I've just done, as you said, the Sydney Comedy Festival, where I was selected in the fresh category, which I think at 56 is very exciting to be considered fresh.
It's awesome. It's awesome.
And I'm really happy with how that show went, both like every aspect of it, the sales of it, the performance of it, being nominated for Best in Stand-Up at Newcastle, and shortlisted for Best in Comedy at Sydney Fringe. Like, they felt really validating, actually. It felt
completely.
really validating.
Yeah. And so clearly you were able to go back to that very painful story and turn it into, or reclaim it really as something funny. And
Yes, reclaiming instead of being something that I hid away from and I was ashamed of. I mean, obviously in the story, in the show, I spoke to the shame. I spoke to that. It was, for me personally, like, I've done the healing, right? Like, it was 20 years ago. I've done so much work on myself in that time. But there was something really powerful for me about putting it out so publicly and being, I'm not going to be ashamed of this anymore.
Yes.
It also, like, within the show, I spoke about, it was an emotionally abusive relationship. there were constant suicide threats on his part. So it was very intense. And I spoke to those things, which I had to do. Like, again, I'm like, I don't know if I'm a good enough comedian to do this, but I'm going to give it a crack. I had to do in a way that I didn't make him the villain or even really the joke. In a way, because, we're obviously dealing with issues of mental illness and stuff like that, which we treat very differently now than we did 20 years ago. So there were a lot of things to navigate through it. But after every show, every time I ran the show, I had someone speak to me and say, thank you so much. You just talked about my marriage or my relationship. I had a woman in Newcastle hug me with tears in her eyes and just be like, thank you. I had a person who works in family law say, I see this every day in my work. Thank you so much for actually telling your story, but finding the humor. I had a counsellor who said, I work in DV and I see this all the time. So from all these different angles, people said to me, thank you for talking about this. And so that felt really powerful and kind of important, despite, like, it's a big story, but the jokes are very silly. One of the best descriptions I've had of comedy or like doing a show is that you have like the house. So the house is the married for 6 weeks. And the story is like the hallways and the entrance and the hallways and bits. And that's like the serious stuff, I guess. The jokes are popping into these different rooms and exploring these silly things, whether it be me giving HR manager vibes or this crazy pair of pink designer denim jeans that my ex-husband purchased, which I called pink penis pants. So there's all these silly little things kind of are the rooms that you go in and explore as you move through the story. So yeah, there were definite decisions about what I would be willing to joke about and what I wasn't willing to joke about, and who was because comedy usually has a villain and a victim. Like, so all of those questions I had to answer, and I tried to do it in a way that was kind but also funny.
It sounds really powerful. And in terms of where we started about the importance of communication, it sounds like you've nailed comedy from that perspective, and your ability to craft a story and take on board the way to build a story through a storytelling through comedy. When you first started talking, you were talking about enjoying the laugh at the end, but actually now you're talking about enjoying people coming up and saying that hit me, that landed with me, that that's changed, that's communicating in a different way about a really serious topic.
Absolutely. Look, I think, if I was creating my ideal future, I would love to be producing not just my own work, but other women's work, whether that be in live environments or, I don't know, I've got a great idea for a TV show, but I'm not going to tell you in case someone, steals it. But that sits on one level as very funny, but then underneath that has this kind of other message. But even having said that, when I first started doing comedy, I was like, I want to do comedy that changes the world and that's serious. But then I also think just the mere fact, I'm 57 next month, that there's a 57-year-old woman not ashamed of it, definitely not invisible, doing silly jokes, having a great time. I do a lot of MC work. I love the MC work, doing crowd, like just having fun without any political agenda or anything like that. That in itself is a powerful and political move.
Yeah, it's an incredible contribution because women like me sitting in the audience get to see someone like you on the stage, and whether you're talking about menopause or being married for 6 weeks, it's you represent. You're
Yeah.
stepping out into onto the stage and showing that this is possible.
Yes. And I think too, and the sort of the way I structured the show, and often my jokes now, is I kind of lean into, because a lot of comedians are like, I'm a hot mess, da da da, that sort of character. And I'm like, no, I've got my shit together. I've got my shit together. I mean, it's obviously changed now because I have found love, but for a long time I was single. So that was sort of like the persona. It was like, I've got my shit together. It's just this whole relationship stuff is a bit hard work. So I do have to write all new material now, um, which I'm actually really excited about. I am really excited about that. Um, and that in itself, will, I think, be quite interesting because it's about not just sitting in the status quo of the heteronormative world, but um, taking leaps in different directions. So I'm quite excited about the new direction for comedy. But even so, like I said, it doesn't matter what it's about. The fact that I'm there, that I'm there,
Yes, yes, absolutely,
and
absolutely.
yeah.
Mm.
But I read something yesterday actually with the release of The Devil Wears Prada 2
Hmm.
that I can't remember the exact headline, but it was something like over 50 women are the new kind of space that media and movies and everything should be moving into because we're the audience.
Mm.
We're the audience. Start talking to us because we've got the time, we've got the money, we've got the interest, we are the audience. So I thought that was really interesting,
Yeah.
actually.
What I want is to be spoken to. I want for
Yes.
my stories to be told. I want to be seen and valued as a member of of society and of community. And the way to do that is to be talking to me, whether it's through advertising or through a movie or through
Mm,
comedy. It's all of those different places where where I want to have my sort of sense of the world and what it's like at this life stage to
yeah,
be seen and visible. Mm,
yeah,
mm.
yeah,
So,
definitely.
what have you learnt about yourself through this time of stepping out onto the stage?
It was interesting because I did well quite quickly, but then to sort of progress to the next level where you could even think about earning some kind of an income through comedy, I know is going to be really difficult. And so I think one of the things I've learned, because I've always been quite a driven, ambitious person, I want to, I've always got like the next move kind of laid out. And the comedy world, that's not going to happen. So it is actually about just allowing myself to enjoy it
Mm,
and to just do it for the pure love. I've also, I think, learnt you have to be willing to fail in comedy. You absolutely have to be. And so there is, I guess I've also been little bit of a perfectionist, and you can't stop that from letting you try new material. And that is a challenge, right? Because you have a certain amount of success and you get a gig and it's like, I'm going to try a new joke tonight. But then it's like, oh, but what if it doesn't work? But you
yeah,
can't keep relying on the old material
yeah,
because you change, the world changes, the audiences change. Maybe the audience has heard you before. So that's an interesting thing, right? Is that you can't just go, okay, I'm good enough now. you have to keep developing and moving and being willing to try new things. So, and I think that's an interesting thing, because we get to a certain age and there is something nice about being comfortable in our skills and our expertise and not having to think about the risk of failure. And so, yeah, comedy has made me do that. But I guess, I don't know, Sue, like my whole life, everything's new. I'm a baby comedian, I'm a baby researcher. Um, I'm not really resting on too many laurels at the moment. Sometimes I think it would be nice. It'd be nice. Um, so yeah, it's just, I guess I need it. I guess I love it at some
Mm.
level.
So, as we come to the close of this conversation today, what's next for you in your flourishing life?
Wow. I have to be very boring now and finish my PhD.
Oh, okay. The fun is over for a little
Fun
while.
is over. Yes, yes. I really, I know that I have to get it done this year. If I don't get it done this year, I mean, I've already lost enthusiasm and interest. So if I don't get it done this year, it will probably never happen. So that is my plan. And then after that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Other than making everybody I know call me doctor, I um, I like I said before, like I do have, like, a dream job would be somehow creating a a production company. I'm already doing it very small scale, but I don't know. I've got a few ideas, but I just don't know what's possible. So
Mm.
maybe I'll just get a academic job, hopefully, and write some more shows.
Yes, yes. And it's so interesting to me to hear you have these very different worlds of, the seriousness of academia and then the comedy, because I too have, this
Mm,
sort of stream of my life that's about academia, and then this stream of so what I think of as head work, and then the what I
yeah,
think of as the heart work, which is and head, it's related to head as well, but my work in supporting women over 50, and both of those parts are very alive in me, and it's important for me to have them available to me all the time. So it's lovely to hear someone else who's got these various different aspects that
yeah,
you are holding as well, Mandy.
yeah. And I think I don't know if I would actually want to just be doing stand up full time all the time. It was a little bit like the yoga teaching. I loved it, but I didn't want to just do that. I mean, I love variety. And I guess we have in our heads that, you find your passion and you make it your job and you never work a day in your life. But I'm like, I don't think it works out like that. In fact, sometimes you find your passion and you make it your job and you end up hating it.
Yeah.
I think, and I guess as we get older and a little bit more stable in sort of financially, kids are growing up, that kind of thing, it gives us the opportunity to explore these different sides of us, because none of us are just one thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And I
That's
think
right.
it's exciting to embrace that.
So if there's a woman listening today who has that part of themselves that they're thinking about leaning into and trying something new, and they're not sure whether to act on it, what would you want her to know?
Oh, I'd say do it, but do it for the love and the joy and the experience, not for the outcome.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm. As we finish today, what's one thing you would like to change about the way society sees women over 50?
Look, I've thought a lot about this one.
Oh,
I've asked around.
good. You've taken the poll of your friends, family, and
I have. I
friends.
have. One of my friends just said, "I don't care. I don't care what society thinks of me."
Uh-huh.
Um, and I kind of think, this idea that women over 50 are invisible, where actually invisibility is a superpower, because
Mm.
you can get away with so much when no one's watching.
Hmm.
Um, and I found this great quote from Gloria Steinem, who said that women grow radical with age. One day, an army of grey-haired women will quietly take over the earth. And I thought that was great because, we're not storming anything. We're already in the building. And so being invisible is actually fine, but don't underestimate us because any moment now, Grandma is taking over.
I love that, Mandy.
Grandma is taking over.
I love it. Mandy, thank you so much for being my guest today on Flourish After 50. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and really appreciated your kind of honest sharing as you took us back into when you first got started in comedy and, how you've traversed the landscape to where you are today. I've really enjoyed listening to you and talking with you.
No, thanks, Sue. I really appreciate it. No, that message is for you as well. You should give it a go.
That might have to be on the quiet. I don't know. I'm certainly not ready for standing in front of anybody doing comedy, but yes. Thanks, Mandy.
So much.
Thanks for listening to Flourish After 50. If today's conversation resonated and you're ready to take the next step, you can work with me one-on-one as your coach, join my 6-week Life on Your Terms program, or be part of a monthly discussion group where we get deeper into some of the topics on this podcast, the Flourish After 50 Circle. You'll find the details and links at flourishavter50.com.au or in the show notes. I'd also love your support. Follow the show on your favourite podcast app, share this episode with a friend, and leave a review. It helps more women discover Flourish After 50 and start their own journey towards what's next. Thank you for listening and for giving yourself the space to be curious about all the possibilities that lie ahead for you. This episode was recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present.